host, The Stephen A. Smith Show, starts right now.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to the latest edition of the Stephen A. Smith Show, coming at you as I love to do every weekday over the airways of ESPN Radio and ESPN News. 250 plus markets across the United States of America. Check your AM, FM listing nearest you, plus ESPN Radio on Sirius XM, Channel 80, plus ESPN Radio. Simulcast over the live national television airwaves of ESPN News. Number to call up as always is 888-SAY-ESPN. That's 888-729-3776. Time for Straight Talk, brought to you by Straight Talk Wireless. Best phones, best networks, no contracts. Got a lot of stuff to get into today. No doubt the first order of business is the Philadelphia 76ers trolloping the Toronto Raptors last night in the Eastern Conference Semifinals Game 3 at the Wells Fargo Center in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, 116-95. Philadelphia started the fourth quarter on a 21-3 run, ultimately blew Kawhi Leonard and the Toronto Raptors out of the building. I should say Kawhi Leonard out of the building because he was the only one that showed up. The Toronto Raptors did not. He had 33 points on 13-22 shooting. That's 59% from the field, ladies and gentlemen. He's averaging more than 33 in this series. By the way, he hit 2 of his 4 3-point shots. He was obviously unstoppable for the most part, but had absolutely positively no help. And that's something that we will discuss as the series progresses, because I thought that the Toronto Raptors would win this series. And the reason I thought that they would win this series is because I'm looking at the health of Joel Embiid. Clearly that left knee had him hobbled. Game 2, he had stomach issues. Damn it, it was diarrhea. Let's just get it out the way. I mean, we got to be so politically correct all the time. The man had the runs, okay? That's what he had. That's what he had. I know it's not popular to say. I know people say that, ooh, do we really need to go there? Get over it. We've all had it, okay? Joel Embiid had the runs. He had diarrhea, all right? Watching people on TV having a camera. Oh, he had a stomach issue. What, y'all ain't have diarrhea before? Y'all don't know what it is? You eat the wrong kind of foods. You end up having to go to the toilet. I'm just thankful he didn't have to go to the toilet while he was on the court, okay? But that was his issue in Game 2. Clearly wasn't an issue for him in Game 3. He finished with 33 points, 10 rebounds, 5 blocks. He was absolutely spectacular throughout the evening. By the way, hit 3 of his 4 3-point shots. What can you say? When Joel Embiid looks like that, the Philadelphia 76ers could win the Eastern Conference, despite their questionable bench. When you look at their bench right now, what are you looking at? James Ennis III did give you 24 minutes and 10 points. Greg Monroe did give you 14 minutes. Mike Scott did give you 13 minutes. TJ McConnell could come off the bench and give you about 10 minutes a game, although he only gave you 5 last night. When you look at the Philadelphia 76ers potentially being able to go 8-9 deep, I thought that Toronto had a better bench. When you look at Ibaka, Van Vliet, Powell, I mean, you look at the Toronto Raptors and one would think they were the team with the bench. They clearly had the superstar that is Kawhi Leonard, who's a champion and an NBA Finals MVP. That's what he had on his resume. You look at Siakam, my most improved player of the year, and what he did the first 2 games. And you're looking at this and you're saying, how can Philadelphia, devoid of a bench with an injured Joel Embiid, win this series? Well, guess what? Evidently, Joel Embiid, his health seems to be getting a little better. And because of that, I think now is the time to have this discussion as to whether or not the chances have improved exponentially for the Philadelphia 76ers to capture the Eastern Conference crown. Now, I am one that has religiously pointed to Boston being their kryptonite because it's undoubtedly so. When you look at how they played against Boston during the regular season, how they played against Boston last year, how Brad Stevens outcoached Brett Brown last season. But if you look at this Philadelphia 76ers squad with the acquisition of Jimmy Butler and Tobias Harris, now it's time to make a different kind of argument. because Jimmy Butler is your backup point guard. And unlike Ben Simmons, Jimmy Butler can run the point, make decisions, but more importantly, he's got a perimeter shot that Ben Simmons won't even attempt. So when you look at it from that perspective, all of a sudden, it makes Philadelphia that much more formidable, particularly with a healthy Joel Embiid, and we can't ignore the possibility of the Philadelphia 76ers coming out of the Eastern Conference Finals, and getting to the NBA Finals. So we got that out the way. And now we also want to get into a discussion. Mark Jackson and Jeff Van Gundy calling the game with Mike Breen last night got into a very, very entertaining argument when Mark Jackson, my brother from another mother, my man, Queens, New York, O'Connell Park, right up the block from where I grew up living in Hollis, Queens. That Mark Jackson, who starred at St. John's, who was the Rookie of the Year in the NBA for the New York Knicks. That Mark Jackson, who was a coach that basically started the foundation that we now witness in the Golden State Warriors, who should still be a head coach in the NBA right now. Who, by the way, should have been interviewed for the Lakers job. That Mark Jackson, who, by the way, lives in LA. That Mark Jackson went on the air last night and said a couple of things about Joel Embiid that, dare I say, got the one and only Jeff Van Gundy up in a little tizzy. Listen to this exchange between Mark Jackson and Jeff Van Gundy during Game 3 of last night's Philadelphia 76ers Toronto Raptors game. Listen to this.
It will be a crime if he leaves this game, barring any injury, not being compared to the best big man that's ever played this game. He's got to be in that discussion.
Hold on. Pump the brakes. No, pump your brakes. Are you? No. We're not going to do that to Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Will Chamberlain, Bill Russell, Shaquille O'Neal, Hakeem Olajuwon, David Robinson, Patrick Ewing. Pump your brakes. Man, you talk about Greg Popovich just rolled over in bed. You just skipped steps right now. You skipped steps. Well, we'll see.
You might see. I see.
Shaquille O'Neal is rolling over in his king-size waterbed right now.
No, those guys that you mentioned, they're looking at it like, Mark Jackson has a point. There's no disrespect to them. It's a compliment to this guy's skill level.
Let me put this argument, encapsulate this argument, and break it down to you this way. Joel Embiid is something special. He's absolutely, positively something special. When he is on the court, he is a load to behold. At 7 feet 1, about 260 pounds, Joel Embiid, just 25 years of age, is unstoppable. He can put the ball on the floor. He's improved playing with his back to the basket. He clearly can do damage facing the basket. He can hit three-point shots. He can score inside or out. He defends. He blocks shots. He is something special. There's nothing to talk about there. But here's where Mark Jackson has a problem. And it's most of you whippersnappers out there that have this problem. Y'all want to ignore resumes. I don't. Joel Embiid was the number 3 overall pick in the 2014 NBA draft. If you recall, he didn't go number 1. That was Andrew Wiggins. He didn't go number 2. That was Jabari Parker. He went number 3. He would have easily gone number 1 if he didn't come out of college, out of Kansas, with those foot injuries. We all understand that. We get that. And in his career, he's a career 24-point per game scorer, 11 rebounds. A career 48% shooter from the field, a 31% shooter from three-point range, a 78% shooter from the free throw line. This year, those numbers are 27 and 13. 48% shooting from the field, 30% shooting from three-point range, 80% shooting from the free throw line. We know what Joel Embiid brings to the table when healthy. But what Jeff Van Gundy was talking about is something that I side with more than Mark Jackson. Mark Jackson didn't question the skill set. That's what he was alluding to, and I get it. My point is, I want to talk about your resume. I want to talk about the first year that Joel Embiid played was 2 years later. He got drafted in 2014. He didn't play until 2016. There's 82 games in a regular season schedule. That year, he only played 31 games. Then in 2017, 2018, he missed another 19 games, played 63. This year, he missed another 18 games. Okay? And we know what he does in the postseason because we know what he did last year. When you look at him in the postseason, last year he averaged 21 and 12 in the postseason in 8 playoff games. This year he's at 22.9 with 11 rebounds. We get what he brings to the table. But we need a resume. When you talk about Shaq and Kareem and Wilt, Olajuwon, guys like that, you know what? In Shaq's first couple of years in the NBA, did you know that Shaq's second season, Shaq averaged 29 and 13? Did you know that both his rookie and his second year in the league, Shaq played 81 of 82 games? Did you know that? Did you know that when Shaq never even attempted a three-point shot his first couple of years in the NBA? Shaq was a man amongst boys. His stepdad, DeSarge, God rest his wonderful soul, used to sit up there and talk about Shaquille O'Neal. Don't let me smack you upside your head. Take your behind, and those are not the words he used. I knew DeSarge, and I loved him dearly. I still miss him. That man sat up there and told Shaq to get his big, you know what, down in the hole, drop, step, swing those elbows, and punish anybody that would get in your way. You're 7'1", 350 pounds. Damn it, act like it. I would know. Shaquille O'Neal would tell you, DeSarge almost slapped me up my damn head because he thought I was letting Shaq off the hook. I was too kind. I said, sir, the man is averaging better than 25 and 12 a game. He's punishing people, hospitalizing them for crying out loud when they try to defend him in the post. What are you talking about? Steven, I want more. You're letting him off the hook. I mean, it was so bad with Shaquille O'Neal, Mama Shaq got on me and said, I'm very, very upset with you. You're being too nice and kind to my son. We have expectations for him. Handle it. Be a man. Ask Shaq if you don't believe me. And Joel Embiid, who is big time, elite in everywhere, but somewhat of a pretty boy comedian from Cameroon. This guy takes the basketball up until this year. What did he do? He takes the basketball, pivots and spins, face the basket because he didn't want to play with his back to the basket. He wanted to be a perimeter player. He wanted to be a finesse player. I'm sorry. That's not going to win you championships in Philadelphia. You got to be a man amongst boys. You got to drop, step, and dominate in the low post the way that he did at the beginning of last night's Game 3 against the Toronto Raptors. This is what is required of Joel Embiid. Nobody can mess with him in the low post. He is supposed to abuse them. Period. Period. And until there's a willingness to do that on a regular basis, with the degree of frequency it requires, let's pump the brakes on talking about him in the same sentence as premier big men who've ever played this game. We're not questioning the skill set. Mark Jackson's not wrong. The skill sets are not to be questioned. What he brings to the table is not to be questioned. We got that. We understand it. Nobody's disputing that. What we're saying is that's not enough. It's not enough to have the skills. You got to utilize them. And he's starting to do that. And from a skill perspective, he's comparable to anybody. But resume matters. Resume matters. And when we get away from resumes, we get ourselves into trouble. Because now we're talking about potential instead of reality and fruition. That's what we're doing here. And I don't think you need to do that if you're trying to win a championship. And that is the situation when it comes to Joel Embiid. So we look at the Philadelphia 76ers. Toronto Raptors in a world of trouble. They better win Game 4. Because they ain't coming back to Philadelphia and winning Game 6. They might win Game 5 back in Canada. They ain't coming back to Philly to win Game 6. I'm telling y'all what I know. They're not doing it. They will not win Game 6 in Philadelphia. If they lose Game 4, Philadelphia wins this series in Game 6. And I'm shocked because I thought that the Philadelphia 76ers could potentially, I didn't predict they'd get swept, but I thought that the potential was there because of the lack of depth and the injury to Joel Embiid. I didn't think Joel Embiid would be able to come out there and play like he did last night on one bum leg. I didn't see that coming. And as the show progresses, we might need to discuss Masai Ujiri and his decision to let go of DeMar DeRozan in favor of Kawhi Leonard. Clearly, Kawhi Leonard is an upgrade, but would it have been worth trading DeMar DeRozan if you only get Kawhi for one season and you get bounced out in the semifinals of the Eastern Conference. Ladies and gentlemen, that's bad. That's very, very, very bad for Masai Ujiri and the Toronto Raptors. If you don't get out of this round and you lose Kawhi Leonard this offseason, you've eviscerated your franchise. Because say what you will about DeMar DeRozan and Valanciunas, but guess what? They did win 59 games in a regular season, and had they not run in to LeBron James, who's been their kryptonite for years, last year, Dwayne Casey would still be the coach. They probably would have advanced to the conference finals, if not the finals, and nobody would have been bothered. But because you lost to LeBron and you got swept, DeMar DeRozan got moved, who never wanted to leave Canada. Loved Canada, loved Toronto. He didn't want to leave, but he would have still been there. Valanciunas likely would have been there. And who knows what we'd be talking about. This has the potential to be absolutely, positively disastrous for Masai Ujiri and the Toronto Raptors if they lose this series and Kawhi leaves in free agency. I can't think of anything that could be worse for them. I really, really can't. 888-SAY-ESPN. That's 888-729-3776. You're listening live to Stephen A., ESPN Radio, ESPN News. Let me tell you this. Let me switch to a different subject. A couple of things. Ladies and gentlemen, I sit here a bit perturbed because D'Angelo Russell for the Brooklyn Nets got caught at LaGuardia Airport. And I don't know how many of you know the story, so let me enlighten you about it, okay? Let me let you know what's going on. D'Angelo Russell, the point guard, the all-star point guard for the Brooklyn Nets, formerly of the Los Angeles Lakers, all right? Before he got traded after ruining Swaggy P, Nick Young's relationship with Ziggy Azalea by taping him in a very incriminating fashion. And we'll leave it at that. He gets traded to the Brooklyn Nets. Ladies and gentlemen, he has an all-star season averaging 21-7 a game. He's actually a really good guy. But he got himself in some trouble. Because en route to Louisville, Kentucky, the report says where his father lives, but you ain't going to Louisville, Kentucky this weekend unless you're going to the Kentucky Derby. Let's just call it what it is, okay? This dude gets cited for marijuana possession after being detained Wednesday at New York's LaGuardia Airport following a baggage check. The spokesman said Russell was summoned for possession of less than 50 grams of marijuana and later released. Oh, it gets better. And let me give all the credit in the world to my contemporary, my colleague at ESPN, Mr. Will Kane, because as much as I went off, Will Kane actually pointed out something very valid, if it were true. The marijuana was found inside a hidden compartment of an Arizona iced tea can. Ladies and gentlemen, do you know that you're not allowed to take liquids through security? So in trying to hide weed, marijuana, D'Angelo Russell put it in a container that wasn't allowed to be going through security. You can't make this up. You can't make it up. When you go through airport security, it tells you you can't have any liquid items. So he put the marijuana inside of a can. You can't make it up. You just can't make it up. The level of idiocy that gets tacked. I mean, if there ever was a case for not being able, for marijuana to be prohibited towards the modern day athlete, this is it. This is it right there. It shows how the brain is camouflaged or compromised rather. It just shows how do you take weed and put it in a can that ain't allowed through security. You can't. Will Kane, I got to give him credit for that, because I didn't even think about that. I'm here thinking he checked in his bags. They looked at the bag. They found something, like whatever the case may be. That's what I was thinking, because it said after a baggage check. Oh, no. Apparently, this dude tried to go through security and put the weed in the can. I mean, what do you say? What do you say? I know everybody's looking for me to say, stay off the weed. I know that. That part about it was funny. Here's what's not funny. You're about to be a restricted free agent. You're in a position to potentially get money from another team. Or have Brooklyn match a potential offer you receive from the other team since you're restricted and they have the right to match. You have an all-star season. That's what everybody's talking about because of the season that you had. The Brooklyn Nets applauded your leadership, the fact that you came back in shape with condition. I've always hated your hairdo, but that's neither here nor there. All right? So you got this going on, and what do? You can't get some weed from Kentucky. You can't sit up there and have it in your bag and get it after you land in Kentucky. Oh, no. What you do is you try to get some weed through airport security. Ladies and gentlemen, I don't have patience for this. I just don't. I have no patience for this whatsoever. I understand and I'm supportive of the Al Harringtons of the world and other athletes who have gotten in the cannabis business. It's profitable. They support it and are advocates of it, particularly for medicinal purposes. And obviously half the states in our country agree with that. I have no issue with that. And in all seriousness, let me be very, very clear. My mother, God rest her wonderful soul, passed away from cancer the morning of Game 1 of the NBA Finals back in 2017. And I strongly considered and to this day wish that I had introduced cannabis to her. Anything for her to be here today. But I got news for you. That's for medicinal purposes, which I completely and totally support. But for recreational use by the modern day athlete, so you can quell your nerves and emotions, or in some cases come on the court or field to play high? Hell no. I don't support that at all. I don't give a damn what state support it. I don't give a damn that it's legalized. The fact of the matter is, if the leagues prohibit it, if you can't pass up using weed during the season, thereby potentially jeopardizing millions of dollars, as some NFL athletes have done, you ain't a fool, you're a new fool. And I have no sympathy for you whatsoever. Now, D'Angelo Russell's not going to be compromised. He's going to get his money. But what does it say about you after the all-star season you had, approaching free agency as a restricted free agent, that you can't display the discipline necessary, if not to just stay off the weed, at least use it in your home and call it a day? You couldn't even do that. It's a damn shame. And I'm supposed to entrust you with my franchise? Please. 888-SAY-ESPN. That's 888-729-3776. I potentially may have some news about the Los Angeles Lakers and their coaching situation in just a few minutes. I'll be discussing that, plus playoff action, plus this D'Angelo Russell faux pas. The list goes on and on. Plus, remember, we got to preview the Warriors and Rockets Game 3 Saturday night in H-Town, which is where I'm at right now and why I'm in H-Town as we speak. So stick around, don't touch that dial. You're listening live to the Stephen A. Smith Show. ESPN Radio, that was Straight Talk Wireless, nationwide coverage on America's largest and most dependable 4G LTE networks. By the way, right now, when you get ahead of Mother's Day rush, 1-800-Flowers is giving you an exclusive 24 for 24 offer. 24 multicolored roses for $24. Don't put this off. Order today. To order 24 stunning multicolored roses for $24, go to 1-800-Flowers.com, click the radio icon, and enter code Stephen A. That's 1-800-Flowers.com, code Stephen A. That's with a PH, not a V. Hurry up. This fantastic offer expires today. This show and all of ESPN is streaming live on the ESPN app. Now with ESPN Plus, where you get more ESPN. Download the ESPN app today and take ESPN everywhere.
Wake up. There's a lot that needs to get done today. Small things, big things, too hard to do alone things. Day after day, you need to get it all done. And here to listen and help you through it all is Bank of America. with the expertise and know-how you need to reach that blissful state of doneness. So let's...
Because of the television contracts, not just the nationwide television contracts, but the local regional television contracts that respective teams have with their local market. That's why nobody was tripping when Mike Trout got his money. Because you know what? The television deal that they signed, which I think was about $3 billion, pays for Mike Trout's salary in and of itself. So why ain't anybody going to trip? But in the end, from an optics perspective, when you're watching a baseball game and you see a stadium that's more than 90% empty, that's pretty damn embarrassing. It's really bad. And I feel sorry for Rob Manfred because I don't think it's his fault. I think he's tried to make changes. I don't think it's his fault at all. I don't think it's Major League Baseball's fault at all. I think it's the fault of the fans. I think it's the fault of the stars who don't commit themselves to marketing the sport. Our very own Alex Rodriguez pointed that out. You have stars in the league that all they want to do is play baseball. They don't want to have marketing obligations. They don't want to do their part outside of playing well. They don't want to do their part from a public relations perspective to help brand and market the sport. Basketball players don't have that problem. Football players don't have that problem. The NFL doesn't have that problem. And that is why Major League Baseball is in a world of trouble.
The Stephen A. Smith Show on ESPN Radio is presented by Progressive Insurance. Guests on the Stephen A. Smith Show appear via the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line, and you can always get in touch with the show through the 1-800-Flowers Twitter feed. Live from Houston for the NBA playoffs, here's Stephen A. Smith.
ESPN Radio is presented by Progressive Home Insurance. Get your quote at progressive.com today. Plus, the NBA playoffs are on ESPN Radio. Tune in tonight as Kyrie and the Celtics host Giannis and the Bucks. Presented by Indeed. Coverage begins at 7:30 p.m. Eastern on most ESPN radio stations. 888-SAY-ESPN. It's 888-729-3776. You are listening live to the Stephen A. Smith Show, ESPN Radio, ESPN2. Top of hour number 2, boxing analyst extraordinaire Dan Rayfield for ESPN.com. He will be on to preview the big fight this Saturday night. Canelo Alvarez versus Daniel Jacobs for the middleweight crown. So we're looking forward to talking about that fight. Absolutely. But until then, let's get to the phones. Let's go to Jamie. You're live with Stephen A. Talk to me, Jamie. How are you?
I'm doing well, Stephen A. How are you?
I'm all right. Go ahead, man. Talk to me.
Stephen A., as a young man, I'm 20 years old. As a young man who was raised by a police officer mother, I must say, first of all, that I'm completely upset by what I heard last night from D'Angelo Russell, especially after listening to you cover him for the past couple of months after the Brooklyn Nets success. The fact that you get caught so blatantly, it's like I want to say, if I didn't know any better, I would say that he did it on purpose, considering what you said at the start of your show, that he got caught with the Arizona bottle, and it just honestly it makes me upset because of you and what you said, I became a Brooklyn Nets fan, and I'm honestly very, very upset about that, and I wanted to make that, but also about the Houston Rockets.
Go ahead,
Stephen A. I'm gonna make like a very bold point. I'm thinking that if Mike D'Antoni does not make it past Game 5 with the Warriors, I'm thinking Mike D'Antoni should be replaced.
Mike D'Antoni?
Yes, sir.
Well, listen, I think when we look at it, I think that Daryl Morey is a damn good executive, a damn good GM, and Tim Legler came on the show yesterday and called it basketball nirvana. When we talk about James Harden and the situation that he's in Houston, because he couldn't ask for a better situation than Mike D'Antoni. Mike D'Antoni puts the ball in his hands. lets him make decisions. Practically every possession goes through James Harden, except for when he needs a reprieve, and then it's CP3. So there's no denying that. But in the end, it does come down to results. And if you're Daryl Morey and you've assembled this roster, and you've hired this coach, and you have yet to get to the NBA Finals, that's a problem. That's a problem. And this is going to mark, the fourth time in the last 5 years that they will have lost to Golden State. At some point in time, you got to change course. Now, I don't think he should be fired just like Masai Ujiri should be fired. Masai has done an outstanding job with Toronto. It's just that you rolled the dice. And if you end up losing DeMar DeRozan because you traded him, and you can't keep Kawhi Leonard, particularly if it's after getting bounced out in the second round again to a team that was not led by LeBron James, that's worse than Dwayne Casey and those boys losing to LeBron James. So, to me, that's what it really, really comes down to. These are two of the highly respected executives in the game, and nobody's advocating that they be summarily dismissed. I'm simply saying that both of them are going to have pretty bad off seasons in light of that reality, and it's just inescapable. All right?
Gotcha. Stephen A., I believe you mentioned yesterday that you said Daryl Morey had built this team specifically to take on the.
That's what he said. That's
correct?
what he said. Yes.
Did Masai Ujiri build the Toronto Raptors to take on LeBron?
No, they did not. What he did was he made a decision, even with LeBron leaving the Eastern Conference to go out west, he made a decision that change needed to be made. So he replaced Dwayne Casey as the head coach with Nick Nurse. That didn't seem to be a bad decision, despite the fact that Dwayne Casey didn't deserve to be fired. The bottom line is Nick Nurse has proven to be a pretty damn good coach. But then, obviously, Kawhi Leonard was a sincere upgrade from DeMar DeRozan. And the belief was with LeBron James gone and Kawhi Leonard in the Eastern Conference that there shouldn't be anything impeding Toronto's path to the finals. And sure enough, the Greek Freak and Milwaukee showed up. Boston, obviously expectations were favored towards them. Philadelphia 76ers are giving it to Toronto right now over the last two games. So if Toronto were to lose this, it wouldn't be a good deal. I got to go. I appreciate the call. Thank you so much. All right. And let's also, again, let me reiterate. It's not, you can't knock Masai for taking a chance. I'm just making the point that if you lose DeMar DeRozan, who never wanted to leave Toronto, and you acquire Kawhi Leonard, but it's only for a year, and he ends up leaving, it's one thing for him to leave while you've captured the championship and you just go into the sunset. It's another thing entirely for you to get bounced out in the second round again with Kawhi there, with DeMar DeRozan gone, and then Kawhi ups and leaves you for nothing this offseason. That would not be a very good position for Masai Ujiri to be in, period. Nate, you're live with Stephen A. What's up?
Stephen A., I want to just point out the fact that, like Shaquille O'Neal once said, the best ability is availability, and this goes down to Mr. Embiid. To me, he only proves that he's better than Greg Oden. That's it. Other than that, he has to build a resume. Wouldn't you agree?
No, because I think you're taking it to the other extreme. Joel Embiid averaged 28 and 14 for crying out loud. What are you talking about? The skills are definitely surreal. He's definitely big time. When healthy, he's the best in the game in the big man's position. We can't deny that. The difference is that his health is questionable, but he did play in the playoffs last year. He's playing in the playoffs now. It's not like he's sitting on a bench of street clothes watching it. And he has averaged better than 21 last year's playoffs, and he's averaging better than 21 in these playoffs. So I think you're going to the other extreme. Greg Monroe, I think you're going too far.
But wouldn't you say that Greg Oden, when he was on the court, even though, yes, he was injured.
Greg Oden, stop it. I'm stopping your ignorance. You can't compare Joel Embiid to Greg Oden. Greg Oden never had a career because he was perpetually injured. Greg Oden was never a factor. It is absolutely disastrous. You know what you think about? Want me to tell you the name more appropriate with Greg Oden, who was picked before Kevin Durant? The name Sam Bowie, who was picked before Michael Jordan in 1984. By the same franchise, by the way. The Portland Trailblazers didn't learn from their errors. They picked Greg Oden just like they picked Sam Bowie. That's the problem. That's the appropriate comparison. Nothing else. Have a nice day. Chris in LA, talk to me.
Good afternoon, Stephen.
Go ahead.
Greg Golden. A couple quick things. I want to disagree with you about Usam Ujiri on the DeRozan trade. I think they had to take a chance, Stephen A, because the Raptors organization knew what that was with DeRozan.
Stop right
and
there.
Lowry.
Stop right there. You guys got to learn to quote me accurately. Who said it was a mistake? What I said is it will be very bad for him if DeMar DeRozan, who is gone and wanted to stay, was replaced by a guy who gets bounced out in the second round and then ups and leaves you. Because now you have neither one of them come this summer. That's all I said. I didn't say that you don't take the chance. I didn't say that it would have been a mistake. What I'm saying is if you lose and then lose Kawhi at the same time, you lose in the second round and then you lose him in the summer for nothing, and you've lost DeMar DeRozan, what's the win?
Right. Okay, I got you. I didn't misquote you. I apologize. I'm just saying. I think they had to take the chance because they know what that is with DeRozan and Lowry, and just hope Lowry plays better, which would enable Kawhi to hopefully stay. But Lowry's not playing well, and then I just don't see no fight with Toronto, Stephen A. Kawhi goes to the bench to start the fourth quarter. They're down 8. They're able to extend that lead to 18 in less than 3 minutes. That's not a good sign. And this is the reason why I feel like they should do everything in their power to get their hands on Mike Conley, because I think he's an upgrade over Lowry because he can impact the game. I don't just mean scoring. I don't care about the scoring. You shoot 0 for 4, okay, from behind, that's fine. But you should be able to impact the game in other ways. 5 assists. You're complaining to the refs. There's other things you can do to help Kawhi out. The reason why they brought Kawhi over here comfortably and being able for you two to play off one another. And they're not doing that. I don't see no fight for Lowry, and it's not a good sign.
That's right. You're absolutely right about that. Lowry's been awful. And I love the kid. He and I go back to his days as a high school player in Philadelphia before he went to Villanova. But come playoff time, he gives you nothing consistently anyway. He has a game here or there where he shows up. And when he does that, they win those playoff games. But for the most part, there's no consistency. You can't trust Kyle Lowry in the playoffs because of his miniature size and his inability to consistently hit perimeter shots come postseason. And that's a big, big problem for the Toronto Raptors. And it's not like he's not getting the shots available to him. The looks that he ends up hitting in the regular season, he doesn't seem to convert in the postseason. And it's inescapable. Plain and simple. Got to run.
I agree. And real quick.
Go ahead real quick, Chris. Go ahead real quick. Go ahead.
Okay, yeah. And I that's the reason why I believe that Kawhi will end up a Clipper, because he saw the fight from the Clippers going up against the Warriors. No All-Star. These guys never quit. So you pair Kawhi
I'm not going to lie to you.
guys.
I'm not going to lie to you. I think it's a very, very good chance that the Clippers could end up getting Kevin Durant and Kawhi Leonard, even though I keep hearing Kevin Durant and Kyrie in New York. I keep hearing that. Let me tell you something. The billionaire that is Steve Ballmer, with Jerry West leading the way, with Doc Rivers coaching, with Lawrence Franks working in the front office, with his right-hand man Ringer, who's a good dude, by the way. Let me tell you something right now. The Clippers have emerged as the first-class organization. They're clearly a better organization than the Los Angeles Lakers at this particular moment in time. And if Kevin Durant and Kawhi Leonard end up going to the Clippers, do you know what, Chris? The Clippers are officially the favorites to win the championship. If Kevin Durant,
I wouldn't go that far, Stephen A.
Yes, I would. Yes, I would. If Kevin Durant and Kawhi Leonard go to Los Angeles Clippers, yes, I would. As presently constructed, this Clippers team, don't change nothing. Just add Kawhi and KD, I predict they'd win a championship next year. Next year. That's right, I said it. Gotta run. Appreciate the call. 888-SAY-ESPN. That's 888-729-3776. And I'm not saying that's going to happen. I'm not saying it could happen. I don't know. It's a 50-50 proposition. But if Kevin Durant and Kawhi Leonard end up in L.A. with the Clippers together, the Clippers should be the favorites to win the crown next year. That's right, I said it. 888-SAY-ESPN. That's 888-729-3776. Back to your calls and more in a minute right here with Stephen A. ESPN Radio, ESPN News. If you missed today's opening segment, go check it out on demand in the Stephen A. Smith podcast, brought to you by Capital One. Capital One is reimagining banking, offering accounts with no fees or minimums that can be opened in 5 minutes. Capital One. Hey, what's in your wallet? Capital One, NA member, FDIC.
Your radio, your computer, your phone.
There's no way that I would have been able to sleep at night if I was the guy having to sign those checks at that time when I gave him that deal, because I just didn't see it at this stage of his career. Number one, being a guy that's reliably healthy. And secondly, is he going to be able
when they're playing that style, is he going to be able to, with the ball out of his hands 70% of the time, are you maxing out your investment in Chris Paul? I think their offense is in some ways almost hinders Chris Paul's ability to even look like he can earn that money.
So does Harden have the right coach for him in Houston with Mike D'Antoni? Or if the Houston Rockets are going to propel themselves to elevated heights, they might need to go in a different direction. And I don't ask that question to be critical of Mike D'Antoni. Man, they're winning games. They're winning 50-plus games. Last year, 60-plus games. They got to within one game of the NBA Finals. It's not to cast any aspersions on them. It's just to look at the talent that is James Harden, asking how long can he continue to do what he's been doing this way before he wears out. That's why I asked that question.
Yeah, and here's my answer to that. He has the perfect coach in Houston. And in fact, maybe the only guy that could coach James Harden and get this level of production out of him, because any other coach, you and I could sit here and juggle names around that we think are the best coaches in the league, and you know we're going to have similar guys on that list, the top 5, top 7, whatever you want to call it. Mm-hmm. Those guys, the way that they believe offense is supposed to look, they're going to, I'm telling you, they're going to get their hands on James Harden and realize, okay, he doesn't run the floor ahead of the ball. So that's one thing right there. Like, he will not begin a possession unless he's the last guy off the floor with the basketball. So right off the bat, you're taking your best player, and think about the wing players and the elite level wings and scorers in this league that handle the ball out. Those guys run ahead. They run ahead sometimes. James Harden's not running ahead. James Harden, if he is not involved in the action that's going to determine his possession, he would much rather stand over by the logo and chill. So my point is, if Mike D'Antoni has figured out a way to make this work with this guy and accepted that this is the offense we're going to run, there are very few coaches that watch that style that think, oh, I'd love to get my hands on James Harden, because I think a lot of people think that's the only way he can play, and ultimately that way can't win a championship.
The Stephen A. Smith Show on ESPN Radio is presented by Progressive Insurance. Guests on the Stephen A. Smith Show appear via the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line, and you can always get in touch with the show through the 1-800-Flowers Twitter feed. Live from Houston for the NBA playoffs, here's Stephen A. Smith.
Get triple action protection for optimal engine performance with Shell V-Power Nitro plus premium gasoline. Champ, you're live on the show. What's going on, bro?
What's going on? I mean, I side with Mark Jackson. Joel Embiid, it would be a shame if he's not considered one of the best big men when it's all said and done.
Of course. When it's all said and done. But right now, you want to look at the resume, and it's like, yo, man, play with your back to the basketball. Dominate the way we know you can.
But you have to throw this in consideration. The new NBA rules, you can front the post and the backside. In the old NBA with the illegal defense, where guys were not checking the basketball, that's illegal defense. In the old rules, we was playing in the old rules pre-2001, the Philadelphia 76ers will walk through the NBA for the next 5 years because you cannot double-team the basketball without the basketball. Right. So with the rule changes, you won't see the greatness of Embiid that you saw with Shaquille O'Neal. And remember, Embiid can stay on the floor in the last 2 minutes. Shaq couldn't. That's why he created a rule, Hack-a-Shaq, for him to be on the floor. Well, you got to remember, because Shaq couldn't hit free throws. Joel Embiid can, which to me is more of a reason why, at least occasionally, he's going to low post, like he did yesterday early in the game. He was dominating down low early. And one last thing, too. I got those out. The addition of Jimmy Butler, we talked about this when the trade happened, that the expectations changed for Philly. They have enough to win now because with the addition of Butler, and you got Simmons and Embiid, if you look at Boston, they do not have the length. Yeah, but you don't get to say that, and I got to run. But trust you me, we going to talk about this later on because I remember you telling me Boston was coming out of the East. So you have some explaining to do, but we could do that Monday, champ, because I got to run. Bills to pay, and Dan Rayfield's coming up next to talk about it.
Here's Stephen A. Smith.
Welcome to hour number 2 of the Stephen A. Smith Show, here with you over the airways of ESPN Radio. ESPN News, 250 plus markets across the United States of America, plus ESPN Radio on Sirius XM, Channel 80, plus ESPN Radio simulcast over the live national television airways of ESPN News. Number to call up as always is 888-SAY-ESPN. That's 888-729-3776. The Stephen A. Smith Show is being brought to you by Indeed, used by over 3 million businesses for hiring. Post a job today at Indeed.com/hire. Search for greatness. Search Indeed. Plus, need seats to a game? Download the Vivid Seats app and enter promo code CHAMPS at checkout to get 10% off your first order. Don't buy just any seat. Get a Vivid seat. On the line with us right now, as promised, is Jumpstart Hour number 2. Is one of the foremost authorities on the sport of boxing, does an absolutely outstanding job for the ESPN family, covering boxing for us in the digital world, the print world, and of course on television sometimes as well. I'm talking about the great one himself, the one and only Dan Rayfield is on the line with yours truly. What's going on, Dan? How are you, buddy? How's everything going?
Everything's great, Stephen. Thank you for that very fine introduction. I appreciate it.
Well, it's well-deserved, no question about it. We know what's going on. We know what's at stake. This Saturday night at the T-Mobile Arena in Las Vegas, Nevada, Daniel Jacobs, the International Boxing Federation IBF World Middleweight title will be on the line. The WBA Super World Middleweight title is on the line. The WBC title is on the line as well. He's fighting for it against Canelo Alvarez. Talk to me coming into this fight. Who do you believe should be the favorite and why?
Oh, I think without question that Canelo Alvarez should be the favorite. He is the favorite. He has a long track record of big wins against a lot of quality opponents. He's faced many, many top fighters. His only loss of his entire career, when he was 23 years old, got outboxed by Floyd Mayweather Jr. No shame if you lose to a fighter like Floyd Mayweather at a time when he was still, somewhat inexperienced at the top level. And Daniel Jacobs has been a good fighter, a top fighter for a long time. Just does not have the caliber of victories or track record that Canelo Alvarez has. A lot of people look to the fact that Canelo has 2 big fights against Golovkin, a draw that most people thought he lost, but still got the draw, the win that was last September, whereas Danny Jacobs in 2017 suffered a decision loss to Golovkin. Close fight, really good fight, but a loss. So people know Canelo better. He's got the better track record. He's got higher accomplishment, and deservedly he is the favorite. But by no means, at least to my mind and to people that you talk to who covered this for a living, do they think this is any kind of blowout fight whatsoever. This is a highly competitive, at least on paper, fight that shapes up like a very entertaining fight, and a fight that is, even if you think Canelo is going to win the fight, it's going to be probably a little bit tough getting there.
What makes it competitive when you look at Daniel Jacobs? What is it about Daniel Jacobs other than a decision loss to Triple G that makes us or should make us believe that this is going to be a competitive fight?
Well, Daniel Jacobs has been a top fighter for a number of years. I mean, this is a guy that's got other wins on his record. When he won his vacant title this past October, he did so against an undefeated fighter named Sergey Deverenchenko, who did not have a lot of professional experience. He was only like 13 or 14-0, but had a monstrous, massive amateur career, akin to, but not as good as, of Vasily Lomachenko type thing, 300-plus amateur wins at the top level, fighting all the top fighters out of the former Soviet Union countries. I mean, a real stud in the amateur ranks, and has proven himself to be a quality guy in the pro ranks. And Danny Jacobs defeated him in a good, close fight in October to get that title. He has other wins of consequence. He did have a fight with Golovkin where a lot of people left the arena that night thinking that Danny Jacobs should have had his hand raised. That would obviously change the perception by a lot of people had he actually gotten the victory that a lot of people thought that he deserved. I mean, you just spend 5 minutes watching Danny Jacobs fight, and the style he fights in, the attributes that he brings. He's physically larger than Canelo Alvarez. He can fight going backwards, which is not something a lot of guys, especially that big, can do. He has excellent punching power. He was also a top amateur, coming up through the USA ranks. He was not an Olympian, but he was at the top level. Multiple New York Golden Gloves championships, which is one of the toughest amateur routes to go if you're in the amateur ranks. And he's just a really good fighter.
Dan Rayfield right here with Stephen A. ESPN Radio, ESPN News. I looked at Canelo Alvarez, and I was of the mindset before the Triple G encounters that this was the smaller fighter. He's moving up in weight. He's not truly a middleweight. I don't know how wise it is for him to find himself in that particular situation. I know he's a counterpuncher. I know he can box. He's certainly proven to me that he can take a punch. But that second fight, watching his body and look at him throw those body shots to Canelo Alvarez, I'm sorry, to Triple G. I don't know many boxers that could take the body shots that Triple G took in that second encounter. Does that have you looking at Canelo Alvarez in a different light than you looked at him when he was a junior middleweight or even a welterweight?
Well, number one, he's always been a tremendous body puncher. I mean, traditionally Mexican fighters, that's one of the things they're taught from the crib is how to throw the left hook to the body. And Canelo Alvarez does it, as well as just about anybody shy of, the great Julio Cesar Chavez Sr. So, throwing body punches it was not a surprise to anybody that watches the fight. Canelo has, for a while before he fought Golovkin the first time, there was a lot of discussion from his team about, why they were maybe, at least the perception of some people was that they were delaying that fight with the talking point, he's growing into become a middleweight. Well, he was growing into becoming a middleweight, a full-fledged, legit adult middleweight. He's now that. He is a bona fide middleweight. His last fight, matter of fact, in December, when he fought above the weight, he fought in the super middleweight division. But now he's back in the division where he is most comfortable, where he belongs. He is a bona fide, strong, powerful, in his prime, middleweight champion of the world. Canelo Alvarez also, at least to my eyes, and I've covered him ever since he came to this country many years ago, he is one of the few fighters who I watch, even in his prime, seems to get better and better and better as the fights go on. He always adds something to his game, even if it's a little wrinkle, whether it's, using his other hand better, whether it's, placing body shots in different parts of the body, his ability to counter, to stand in the pocket and actually use defense. One of the reasons why, people just think, he's just this prototypical Mexican brawler. That's absolutely not correct. You mentioned good counterpuncher, but also, very defensively responsible. He gets hit with punches, but he has an ability to roll with some of those shots, to take the sting out of them, not take the full force of those punches. And that's why he's still going strong without having lost a step whatsoever after, more than 50 professional fights.
Real quickly on this particular answer, why did he move up to super middleweight to fight Rocky Fielding? Was that just to acquire or capture another title at a different weight class? What was the reason? I mean, Rocky Fielding, you looked at him, he was tall, he was skinny, he looked tailor-made for Canelo, and obviously Canelo made quick work of him. Why even take that fight?
Well, he wanted to get a second fight in last year. Remember, he was suspended because of a positive drug test, and so the first fight, or the rematch with Golovkin, was postponed from May to September. Still wanted to get a second fight in. So they were coming back on very short notice from September to December, so they weren't going to go in with a big mega fight. He was changing broadcasters because HBO was getting out of the boxing business. The Zone was coming in, and he did that deal with them. He made like $15 million, so that's a nice, easy payday to fight Rocky Fielding. But more to the point, I think besides all those particular things we just mentioned, he felt like this was an opportunity to do two things. One, have his first ever fight in New York City, where he's wanted to fight in Madison Square Garden, and they were able to do that and make the schedule work. And also because Rocky Fielding was available, and Canelo felt, even though Fielding had a second-tier title in the super middleweight division, for him he felt like it was a feather in his cap to be able to go up a few pounds against the perfect kind of opponent for him and grab another belt. To put on that resume checklist, on the to-do list, so to speak, but knowing that his really big fights and the bigger money and the more fan-friendly fights and the things that people wanted to see were still in the middleweight division where he could make that weight with no problem. So they just took that as a one-step, one-shot deal. I liken it to, if you go back in the day, there was a time when Pernell Whitaker, a welterweight champion, dominating fighter, took a one fight move up to capture a world title as a junior middleweight, and then immediately came back down to weight. Same kind of situation with Canelo. Saw the opportunity, took it, and now he's back where he belongs.
Dan Rayfield, boxing writer extraordinaire for ESPN, right here with Stephen A., ESPN Radio, ESPN News. Those two wars that Canelo went against Triple G with, when we talk about boxing, and obviously you're one of the people that I listen to, very, very much so when it comes to the sport of boxing, when you consider the wars that he had been in, usually in some instances we see wars having taken away from somebody, whether it's Riddick Bowe and Evander Holyfield or something along those lines, dating back to Ali, Frazier, and the trilogy that they had against one another, et cetera, et cetera. When you see this, I don't see any signs that anything was taken away from Canelo Alvarez after the two fights against Triple G. What about you?
I agree with that, but remember, the only thing we've been able to see since that fight, the second fight anyway, is the fight against Rocky Fielding, which was, a fight even a diminished Canelo Alvarez probably would have been able to handle with relative ease. The first real test, frankly, is going to be what we see on Saturday against Danny Jacobs. But my perception is, in seeing him and talking to him and watching those fights back, he didn't take huge punishment in those fights, in my opinion, and he sounds good and he looks good and he feels, you can just sort of feel that he is in a good spot. He seems very strong. I detect absolutely zero difference in his demeanor, in the way he carries himself, and the people around him whatsoever from what happened the first couple of Triple G fights to where you are now.
But listen to that, Dan. If you've seen nothing that was taken away from him in the 2 fights against Triple G, why should we want to see a third? Because Trelly Triple G has signed with the Zone as well, and he definitely wants to fight Canelo Alvarez again without question because of the money just as much as anything else. But I don't know what else is there to take from Canelo Alvarez going up against Triple G, with the exception of this fight against Daniel Jacobs. What else is there for him, Canelo, in the middleweight division? If Daniel Jacobs works out with relative ease and Triple G is not something that we should be clamoring to see, but so much, what else is there for Canelo Alvarez to do?
Well, first off, if they don't fight a third time, I can live with that. I think a lot of people do want to see it, though, frankly, because they were so close. A lot of people think that Golovkin should have walked away with his hand raised 2 times and not instead of being 0-1 in a draw. So that's one factor. But as far as Canelo's perspective, he's been asked about a third Triple G fight, since the moment that the fight with Danny Jacobs was signed. And what he has said consistently is, he's open to it. If the fans want it, I'll do it. But he's been making a little bit more of a caveat the last several weeks, month or so, saying, I'll fight Triple G if he has a title, because this is the year I want to sweep the middleweight division and win all the titles. Now, he knows that when it comes time to fight the second time this year in September, when Canelo has his next date, everything goes okay on Saturday, that Golovkin is not going to have another title belt because his next fight is on June 8th. He's fighting a slightly above the 160-pound weight limit against a tune-up type opponent in Steve Rolls at Madison Square Garden, and that's not a world title fight. So if he's serious about wanting to be the guy that has the undisputed title in middleweight and he beats Danny Jacobs, he'll have 3 of the major belts. The 4th belt is owned by the Providence, Rhode Island undefeated Olympian, 2-time world champion Demetrius Boo Boo Andrade, who was going to be here ringside on Saturday, wanting to line up the winner of that fight. Now, he's good buddies with Danny Jacobs, but he would fight him because there's money and glory there. But he really wants to fight with Canelo Alvarez. And Alvarez, if he really is truly serious about wanting the 4th title to become undisputed, there's never been a Mexican undisputed champion of the 4-belt era. That would be a huge feather in his cap, sort of the way he went up to try to grab that super middleweight belt. Demetrius Andrade, and I wrote this yesterday, is going to fight June 29th at home in Providence for the first time in his career against a quality contender named Zaleski from Poland, whose only loss was a very close decision against Danny Jacobs a couple years ago. And so there's a possibility that Canelo, because he has no love for Triple G, they have a bad blood these days after all the stuff that went down with the bad drug test, he may, give Triple G the finger, so to speak, and maybe go fight Demetrius Andrade for the opportunity to be the undisputed champion. So I think that is a possibility.
Where would that leave Triple G if Canelo doesn't want to fight him?
That will leave Triple G, looking for the next best available guy. It's not out of the realm of possibility. Again, if Triple G and Canelo don't fight the 3rd time, but Danny Jacobs and him have a good fight on Saturday and it's a close competitive fight, I don't know if there's a reason why we wouldn't necessarily see a rematch between Golovkin and Jacobs. They put on a great fight in 2017. It wouldn't be necessarily for the stakes that there were the first time around, with world titles at stake, et cetera, but it's still a very attractive matchup. It's going to come down to, obviously, the folks at the Zone who have signed all these guys, because Demetrius Andrade is with them also. They're going to have some input in what fights get made, and, the promoters are going to sit down and talk about it. But, Triple G, on his own as a star in this sport, is going to have the ability to lure other guys into the ring, because only one guy can fight Canelo at a time, and the guy that doesn't get the Canelo lottery ticket can maybe get the consolation prize and fight Golovkin.
Dan Rayfield right here with Stephen A., ESPN Radio, ESPN News. Let's get into a broader discussion about boxing before I let you get on out of here, Dan, because nobody's more qualified to discuss the subject than you. I'd like to know, with HBO stepping out of the boxing business, with Bob Arum for Top Rank calling out Al Heyman after Terrence Crawford, won his fight against Amir Khan, etc., when Amir Khan quit as far as I'm concerned, I would ask you this question. How are you feeling about the state of boxing now compared to how you felt about it 5 years ago, 10 years ago?
I think it's in a better spot now because there's more attention on it. There's more platforms that are investing large amounts of money in it, whether it's the amount of money that ESPN is paying in rights fees, Top Rank, over the course of what was originally like a 4-year deal that was torn up after 1 year and turned into like a 7 or 8 year deal, plus all the massive investment they've made to bring events for boxing, both Top Rank fights as well as overseas fights that Top Rank, buys rights to put on ESPN Plus. So that's huge for the sport. You have the investment from Fox in the PBC platform. They're showing fights on free national television, Saturday nights at 8 o'clock, roughly once a month, not to mention their cable fights that are of a high quality. So they're investing a tremendous amount of money. Showtime is still in the game, investing their money, doing significant fights with big names. So to me, it's that aspect of it is good. There's money flowing. It's in front of a lot of people. It's on free national television. It's on basic cable. It's on streaming services. I mean, you can find it pretty much wherever you want. It's obviously good for the fighters because there's more money flowing than there's been in a long, long time, maybe ever in the history of the sport. The only downside, negatively, is that you're basically operating a business that's within, I call it like the three universes. You have the ESPN Top Rank universe, which they do their fights and do a hell of a job doing them. You have the Showtime, Fox, PBC fights. They put on a lot of good fights, but they're not fighting with the other companies' guys. And then you take the DAZN side of the street, which is involved. It's DAZN, it's Golden Boy fighters like Canelo and some of their other fighters, as well as Eddie Hearn's fighters from Matchroom Boxing, including Danny Jacobs and a number of other quality guys that they have under their contract. Anthony Joshua, for example, one of the heavyweight champions. So they do fights in there, and there's not that much overlap. Occasionally there'll be a fight that gets made between the two for different reasons. Maybe it's a mandatory. But what could really make boxing bloom and blossom even greater than it is if they could figure out a way to come together and to allow those fighters in each of those silos to fight each other in the biggest fights the fans want.
Dan Rayfield right here with Stephen A., ESPN Radio, ESPN News. One of the other things I'm interested in asking you about, and I get this from my man Michael Thompson. If you notice, he works for ESPN LA, the father of Klay Thompson, 3-time champion with the Golden State Warriors. Michael Thompson does work for us right here on ESPN LA, and he had been asking me to ask you this question for weeks now, and he just reminded me a few minutes ago. Remember how Sugar Ray Leonard and Tommy Hearns both moved up from welterweight to the middleweight division to ultimately fight Marvin Hagler? If Bob Arum is right and Al Heyman is in the way, you can answer that question whether or not Al Heyman is in the way as well of an Errol Spence Jr. Terrence Crawford fight, because I think that's the number one fight everybody in boxing wants to see. Maybe Deontay Wilder versus Anthony Joshua as well. But I would ask you this, Dan Rayfield. What about the possibility of Errol Spence Jr. moving up to fight Canelo? What's the possibility of that?
Well, listen, I have said for a long time, as a matter of fact, that in my mind, the biggest fight in boxing a few years from now would be Canelo Alvarez against Errol Spence Jr. And I have visions of that. Obviously they can bring a fight like that to the T-Mobile Arena in Las Vegas and, generate huge amounts of money. And,
why would that be the biggest fight for you, Dan? Why would that be the biggest fight for you?
But hold on. You take that fight and you put it in AT&T Stadium in outside of Dallas, where Canelo has fought and drawn 50,000 plus people, and where Errol Spence just fought a month and a half ago against Mikey Garcia and drew over 40,000 people. Yep. And you bring in the Dallas folks, who would be there because Errol's a hometown guy, and Canelo Alvarez is a bona fide draw and a huge star within the Hispanic community, which is obviously very large in Texas. You make a massive fight. I think it's absolutely conceivable that down the road that Errol Spence will ultimately become a middleweight or take a chance to fight as a middleweight for that kind of a fight, and Canelo Alvarez is still going to be around. That is a gargantuan, massive fight that, again, a lot of things have to happen. A lot of things got to fall into place. But that could be a spectacle beyond spectacles. I agree with Thompson. Huge mega fight. I hope that fight happens. In my long view of the sport, we want to see guys like Spence and Crawford now, or Joshua and Wilder now, but I'm thinking like 2 years from now, 3 years from now, Canelo Spence, gargantuan mega fight.
Well, let me ask you this. If Spence was to fight Crawford right now, who would you favor?
Well, at welterweight, that's a hard fight to pick. They're both super talented guys. I mean, I have Errol Spence rated number 1 in the welterweight division, but that's based largely on the fact that he's been fighting in that weight class longer, has maybe a little bit more accomplishment in the weight division. But Terrence Crawford has got the same kind of talent, both super fast, both good counter punchers, both good punchers, period, defensive. responsible defensively, but good amateur career. Spence was an Olympian, but Crawford was, just a hair away from being at that level. I mean, that's a coin flip. I got to be, that's the kind of fight where you don't really make a pick till like sort of the end, where you sort of maybe want to look and see how the guy looks, how you hear him talk, and how he maybe, his body language. It's a hard 50-50 fight right there.
I'm interjecting and cutting you short because I got a couple more questions I want to ask. Why I got to get you on out of here right now.
But
when
Clay
you look
Thompson,
at
that guy's a genius to think about that fight.
that's Michael Thompson's daddy, no question about it. I'm sorry, that's Clay Thompson's daddy, Michael Thompson. But here's the deal: is there anybody else in the welterweight division that you think could beat Errol Spence Jr. outside of Terrence Crawford?
At the moment, I mean, look, anybody can lose on a given night, but obviously that's the fight where you look at the weight class and you think, okay, who can beat the other guy? And the only one I can think of that's the most competitive, most hard fight to pick is that fight. It's sort of like I think about with the lightweight division. I don't think there's a lightweight or below in the world that can hang with Vasily Lomachenko except for Mikey Garcia. And likewise, I don't think there's a single lightweight or below that can hang with Mikey Garcia except for Lomachenko. They're not fighting, but that's the fight you want to see. It's a 50-50 kind of fight. Same kind of deal with Crawford and Spence, and same kind of deal in the heavyweight division with Anthony Joshua and Deontay Wilder.
How did you feel about Mikey Garcia stepping up 2 weight classes to challenge Errol Spence Jr. as opposed to demanding that Lomachenko fight him at the lightweight division?
Listen, Stephen A., I live in the real world, and I understand the business issues and the politics issues and the nature of the platforms that they fight on. And I have a lot of respect for Mikey daring to be great. That's what I call it. He wanted to go up. He wanted to make history by trying to win a world title in a 5th weight division. Errol Spence was available to him. Errol Spence is a guy that he's been calling out since even before he fought Robert Easter last summer to unify the lightweight titles. He obviously made, north of $8 or $9 million for that fight. So it was by far and away the biggest payday he's ever had. So I don't have any quarrel with him trying to make that match and try to achieve the greatness that would have come if he had been able to win the fight. Okay, he lost the fight. That doesn't mean we still can't try to see the Lomachenko fight. It's a hard, difficult fight to make for 1,000 reasons. But I'm hopeful that maybe someday it will happen.
Dan Rayfield right here with Stephen A. ESPN Radio, ESPN News. Before I let you get on out of here, your prediction for this fight, Jacobs, Canelo Alvarez, Saturday night.
Close fight, tough fight, good fight. But I think in the end, Canelo Alvarez a little bit more well-rounded, do a little bit more, a little bit better of a puncher, a little bit better of a boxer. And the judges love him, and it's shown. And I think he gets a decision.
You don't think it ends in a knockout?
No, I mean anything is possible, but I don't see any reason why I would think that. Canelo has shown himself to have a great chin over the course of his career. Danny Jacobs is, in his first loss many years ago, which I was here in Las Vegas for, he did get knocked out by a fighter named Dimitri Pirog, who was a very talented middleweight whose career was cut short by a back injury. They fought for a vacant title. He got stopped in that fight. The referee basically jumped on him and wouldn't let him try to get up. That's the first thing. The second thing is, and I'm not big on excuses, but I'm going to give Danny Jacobs a pass in that fight because everybody who followed him at that time knows he should never have gotten in the ring that night. Number one, it was a bad match because they pushed him into that fight too quickly, in my opinion. Pirog was a much more talented guy and more experienced and seasoned at that moment. But more importantly, Danny Jacobs' grandmother, the woman who raised him, who was like his mother to him, died like 4 days or 5 days before that fight. And he should never have gotten in the ring that night. He was extremely distraught about that whole situation, understandably. Had no business in being in the boxing ring. His mind was on everything other than the boxing match that night, and he paid the price for it. So I give him a pass on that loss. Other than that knockdown and knockout in that fight where he was getting up to his feet, I think he's only been down one other time. It was a flash knockdown against Sergio Mora in a fight that he came back and won by knockout.
And he went down to Triple G. He went down against Triple G as well.
Oh, yeah, and exactly, in the Triple G fight. So those two, again, but Triple G is like one of the best punchers maybe in boxing history, to be honest with you, in the middleweight division anyway. And so, again, he's shown a good chin over the course of his career. I mean, I saw Canelo Alvarez in one of his first fights that were, significant fights in the United States, fought on a big undercard, and almost got knocked out in the first round by Miguel Cotto's older brother. And everybody thought, oh, my goodness, this guy is all hype. He's never going to be able to hang. He's got no chin, blah, blah, blah. He's gone on since then. You don't ever see him get rocked or wobbled or down or anything like that. And he's become one of the best fighters, in the world, and he's going to be in the Hall of Fame someday. So these guys, the reason I don't think a knockout is because both guys have shown themselves to have good chins. Now, if Canelo can get that body shot in against that tall, rangy Danny Jacobs, you never know.
I got one last question for you. Spence, we know he has an opportunity to make over at least over $20 million if he fights Terrence Crawford. One would ask, why is he allowing Al Heyman to stop that from happening? What's the educated response to that, Dan Rayfield? You would know.
Errol Spence is an adult. He's a grown man. He has will of his own. If he wants to make the fight with Terrence Crawford, he needs to go and speak with Al Heyman and his people and say, Al, go call Bob, or, let's figure out a way to get the fight done. It's just not that easy. If you're Al Heyman and Bob Arum goes down to the press row after the Crawford-Khan fight and talks about how I want to make this fight. He's been saying it all along, and I'll take Bob at his word. I think he does want to make the fight because he doesn't really have a lot of other options for a big fight for Crawford. The problem is, even if that's the case, you can't then spend the next 15 minutes calling Al Heyman terrible names and saying things making into like some kind of racial issue, et cetera, and not expect him to have some pushback and, take your call on Monday morning. So, everybody's kind of got to take a deep breath and, you don't have to be best friends with people you make boxing deals with or any business deal for that matter. You got to try to get in a room and do it and see what's best, not only for your fighter, for your company, for your broadcast partner, and try to get a deal done. But there's been it takes two to tango. So Bob can say, I want to make a fight. He can be truthful and well-meaning and want to do that. Maybe just got caught up in the emotion by saying the things he said about Al. But, the Heyman side hasn't really shown any desire to make the fight whatsoever. They won't even bring it up. I mean, they did a graphic on one of the Heyman shows that PBC operates where they put up a graphic of it, showed pictures of all the best welterweights in the world, and they didn't put a photo of Terrence Crawford on the
wow.
graphic. Are you kidding me?
Yeah, that's personal.
That's ridiculous.
No, that is ridiculous. Dan Rayfield, appreciate it. Great work as always, man. Look forward to seeing your stuff from Vegas this weekend. Thanks a lot.
All right, Stephen, I appreciate it. Enjoy the fight, my man.
All right, buddy. The one and only Dan Rayfield, boxing writer extraordinaire for ESPN, does great work for us. Make no mistake about it. Looking forward to listening and watching him over the weekend and reading his stuff, of course. 888-SAY-ESPN. It's 888-729-3776. You listen live to Stephen A. ESPN Radio, ESPN News. We'll get back to your calls on the NBA playoffs on this fight Saturday night as well. So stay tuned. Don't touch that dial. Tune in for an NL Central rivalry this Sunday as the Cubs host the Cardinals, presented by Embiid. Coverage of Sunday Night Baseball begins at 6 p.m. Eastern on ESPN Radio and the ESPN app, and at 7 p.m. on ESPN. By the way, when you're hiring, you don't want to waste time sorting through dozens of irrelevant resumes, do you? You want an efficient way to get to a short list of qualified candidates. That's why you need Indeed.com. Post a job in minutes, set up screening questions based on your job requirements, then zero in on qualified candidates using an intuitive online dashboard. Discover why 3 million businesses use Indeed for hiring. That dude can play baseball and be just as effective in the sport of baseball, and we won't support it from a box office perspective. You know why? Because he's devoid of the sizzle. And the people that do have sizzle, we try to reel them in. And as a result, it's in everybody's best interest to shut the hell up, go out there and play baseball, because they know with or without attendance numbers, they're going to still get paid. Because of the television contracts, not just the nationwide television contracts, but the local regional television contracts that respective teams have with their local market. That's why nobody was tripping when Mike Trout got his money. Because you know what? The television deal that they signed, which I think was about $3 billion, pays for Mike Trout's salary in and of itself. So why ain't anybody going to trip? But in the end, from an optics perspective, when you're watching a baseball game and you see a stadium that's more than 90% empty, that's pretty damn embarrassing. It's really bad. And I feel sorry for Rob Manfred because I don't think it's his fault. I think he's tried to make changes. I don't think it's his fault at all. I don't think it's Major League Baseball's fault at all. I think it's the fault of the fans. I think it's the fault of the stars who don't commit themselves to marketing the sport. Our very own Alex Rodriguez pointed that out. You have stars in the league that all they want to do is play baseball. They don't want to have marketing obligations. They don't want to do their part outside of playing well. They don't want to do their part from a public relations perspective to help brand and market the sport. Basketball players don't have that problem. Football players don't have that problem. The NFL doesn't have that problem. And that is why Major League Baseball is in a world of trouble.
Radio is presented by Progressive Insurance. Guests on the Stephen A. Smith Show appear via the Shell Pennzoil Performance Line. And you can always get in touch with the show through the 1-800-Flowers Twitter feed. Live from Houston for the NBA playoffs, here's Stephen A. Smith.
1-800-Flowers.com. With 1-800-Flowers.com. Distance doesn't mean anything this Mother's Day. You can still brighten Mom's special day with 24 multicolored roses for $20 to $4 from 1-800-Flowers. To order, go to 1-800-Flowers.com, click the radio icon, and enter code Stephen A. That's with a PH, not a V. Let's go back to the phones at 888-SAY-ESPN. It's 888-729-3776. Thanks again to the great Dan Rayfield, boxing writer extraordinaire for ESPN, for taking time out of his busy schedule to come on the show. And thanks also to Michael Thompson, my colleague at ESPN LA, the father of Klay Thompson of the Golden State Warriors, for texting me to ask a couple of those questions, because damn it, I might have missed it if it wasn't for my man Michael Thompson. So thank you very, very much for reminding me a couple of things that I needed to ask Dan Rayfield about. I appreciate the help, no doubt. Let's go back to the phones. Let's go to Don. You're live with Stephen A. Talk to me, Don.
Stephen A., happy Friday. Great show, great topic.
Thank you. Go ahead, buddy.
Man, I think we all really need to hold Canelo's feet to the fire. I mean, for not to duck a third fight with Triple G. That's a fight that's got to be made. And I really am intrigued to see a third fight, wondering who Triple G's new trainer is going to be.
Well, let me stop you right there. I'm not in agreement with you there. I'd like to see the fight. I wouldn't be against it, but Canelo doesn't have to. I mean, he fought 2 fights, and that second fight, I would put you on the spot about this, Don. Are you ready for this? Are you listening carefully? Because I want you to hear this question.
Oh, sure,
okay?
Anytime.
I want you to hear this question. Triple G called Canelo out and said, I thought you were Mexican. You busy running, the first fight. I'm here. I got to stalk you. I got to chase you. And he talked a lot of trash. This is Triple G. And fight number 2, Canelo Alvarez walked right to him and stood right in front of him the entire fight. Now, you can't deny that. So to me, if you Triple G, you're the bigger, more natural middleweight. You called him out. And then when he showed up, Triple G was backing up half the fight. And you know that's true, Don. So I can't sit up there and say to Canelo, excuse me, you owe him a trilogy. No, he doesn't. I'd like to see it. But if Oscar De La Hoya has different plans for Canelo Alvarez, and Canelo Alvarez is fine with not fighting Triple G, I can't sit up there and throw shade on Canelo. He showed up in the second fight, which, by the way, I thought that he actually lost by decision. Close decision, but nevertheless, I thought he lost. But he showed up for the second fight and stood right in front of Triple G, Don, and was throwing vicious body shots. Stood right in front of him. Let's give him credit where credit is due.
Oh, well, yeah, but you see, those two arguments kind of contradict each other. You just got done saying that you actually thought Triple G won by a close decision, which I think is arguable. But then you try to make it sound like Canelo beat him all over the ring. No, Canelo
No. That's not what I'm saying. I'm only making that point to say Canelo doesn't owe him a third fight. We can debate about who won fight number 2 and stuff like that, Don. I'm saying that Canelo doesn't owe you a third fight when you called him out and tried to embarrass him after fight 1 and he showed up right in your face for fight 2. How many times is he going to owe him?
Steve A., but that's all, number one, that's all the more reason we want to see a third fight. And
see, oh my goodness. Am I talking to Max Kellerman here? Are you not listening to me? I did not say we shouldn't get a third fight. I'm saying don't treat Canelo like he owes it to him. He does not. You call a man out and you embarrassed him and brought up the PEDs, the spiked food and all of that other stuff. You called him out, you embarrassed him, you ticked him off, and he showed up for the rematch and stood right in front of your face. You don't owe that man another fight if that's not what you want to do. That's my only point.
Well, no, I hear what you're saying, except I don't care about Canelo. I care about us. I want to see that fight. Boxing fans deserve it. You know, people, journalists, broadcasters, everybody needs to stand up for the fan and for the sport, not for the individual fighter. I want to see the dang fight.
Yeah,
And
but
if the
what,
first
what, I'm
two
saying,
fights were-
what I'm saying to you is you might want to see the fight. I don't mind seeing it, but I'm all right without it. I'm all right without it because they fought. I think it goes to the decision again. And I don't like that. I tell you this, I'm not being completely forthcoming. The third reason that I really have a problem with, I don't like the fact that Triple G is so considerably older than Canelo and has been through these 2 wars, and then you go in for a third against the guy. I don't like if Triple G was younger, I wouldn't mind at all. But the fact that he's older, I think puts Canelo at a considerable advantage in a trilogy.
I hear you, but you know the one thing, real quick, the one thing I want to say is I don't know, but I want to see who Triple G's next trainer is going to be, because one reason I think his old trainer got let go is Golovkin made 0 adjustments. The second fight, he looked like he's still trying to land one punch. You got to go to the body, you got to break Canelo down. And I want, look at the second fight between Ray Robinson and Randy Turpin. Just look at that film.
Oh, my Lord.
And
Ray
that is
Robinson, you
blue-
going to the 60s now, bro? Don, have a nice day. I got to go, Don. I gave you enough time. I listened to you, but now you lost me when you brought up fighters that existed before we were born. I was born in 1967. I mean, come on, man. Come on now. I ain't got time for that. 888-SAY-ESPN. It's 888-729-3776. Back with your calls to close out the show in a minute. You're listening live with Stephen A. ESPN Radio, ESPN News. By the way, if you missed any of today's show, go check it out on demand in the Stephen A. Smith podcast, brought to you by Capital One. Capital One is reimagining banking, offering accounts with no fees or minimums that can be opened in 5 minutes. Capital One, hey, what's in your wallet? Capital One and a member FDIC. This show and all of ESPN is streaming live.
There's no way that I would have been able to sleep at night if I was the guy having to sign those checks at that time when I gave him that deal, because I just didn't see it at this stage of his career. Number one, being a guy that's reliably healthy. And secondly, is he going to be able to, when they're playing that style, is he going to be able to, with the ball out of his hands 70% of the time? Are you maxing out your investment in Chris Paul? I think their offense is on, in some ways, almost hinders Chris Paul's ability to even look like he can earn that money.
So does Harden have the right coach for him in Houston with Mike D'Antoni? Or if the Houston Rockets are going to propel themselves to elevated heights, they might need to go in a different direction? And I don't ask that question to be critical of Mike D'Antoni. Man, they're winning games. They're winning 50-plus games. Last year, 60-plus games. They got to within 1 game of the NBA Finals. It's not to cast any aspersions on them. It's just to look at the talent that is James Harden, asking how long can he continue to do what he's been doing this way before he wears out. That's why I asked that question.
Yeah, and here's my answer to that. He has the perfect coach in Houston. And in fact, maybe the only guy that could coach James Harden and get this level of production out of him, because any other coach, you and I could sit here and juggle names around that we think are the best coaches in the league, and we're going to have similar guys on that list of top 5, top 7, whatever you want to call it. Mm-hmm. Those guys, the way that they believe offense is supposed to look, they're going to, I'm telling you, they're going to get their hands on James Harden and realize, okay, he doesn't run the floor ahead of the ball. So that's one thing right there. Like, he will not begin a possession unless he's the last guy off the floor with the basketball. So right off the bat, you're taking your best player, and think about the wing players and the elite level wings and scorers in this league that handle the ball out. Those guys run ahead. They run ahead sometimes. James Harden's not running ahead. James Harden, if he is not involved in the action that's going to determine his possession, he would much rather stand over by the logo and chill. So my point is, if Mike D'Antoni has figured out a way to make this work with this guy and accepted that this is the offense we're going to run, there are very few coaches that watch that style that think, oh, I'd love to get my hands on James Harden, because I think a lot of people think that's the only way he can play, and ultimately that way can't win a championship.
The Stephen A. Smith
Philadelphia 76ers assistant coach, former head coach for the New Orleans Pelicans and Hornets. He is going to be the new head coach for the Phoenix Suns. For those of you who may not remember, tragically, he lost his wife in a car accident. I believe it was in 2016. Married to his lovely wife for over 20 years. They had 5 children together. She was killed in a car accident, some head-on collision. Somebody crossed the divider and hit her head-on, and she lost her life. And anybody that knows Monty Williams knows that no matter how good of a coach you think he is, it pales in comparison to the man, the person, the father, the teammate, the coach that he is. I mean, this guy is a sensational, sensational person. And this opportunity could not have come to a better man. So we wish him nothing but the best moving forward in Phoenix. Now he's just got to get Devin Booker a point guard, and I think everything will be fine. Anyway, let's get back to the phones. Let's go to Bilal. You're live with Stephen A. Real quick, Bilal, go ahead.
Hey, how you doing, Stephen A? I appreciate you for having me on the show.
Thank you, man. Go ahead, real quick, buddy.
All right, man. I'm just having a hard time about these GMs in the NBA here today. I'm gonna give you 3 coaches that I felt that didn't get a fair chance, and I know life isn't fair, but I just.
My brother, really I told you, I'm running out of time because it's near the end of the show, man. I need those names. Give it to me.
I'm gonna give you Mark Jackson. I'm gonna give you Dwayne Casey, and I'm also going to give you Jason Kidd. Now,
for which job? For which job you talking about?
Well, I'm talking about the head coaching jobs. How they got fired and everything.
Well, Dwayne Casey's the coach of Detroit.
Yes, but I'm talking about his run-in with Toronto. I think the GMs kind of put the coaches in a rough situation because I'm gonna give you some credit. You know your X's and O's in basketball and things of that nature by playing D2 ball and things of that nature. So it's like, when you look at that situation, you got to put certain players around these star players.
I got you. I'm running out of time, bro. I got your point, though. It's valid. I hear where you're coming from. I appreciate it. But call Monday when I got more time, and I'll put you on. Thanks again, my man. Let's go to Albert real quick. You're live with Stephen A. Go ahead, Albert.
Hey, how's it going, Stephen A?
Yeah, by the way, Tyronn Lue is in all likelihood is about to be your next head coach for the Los Angeles Lakers. It ain't etched in stone, but it's looking like it's going to be that way by the end of the weekend, if not sooner. Go ahead, real quick. You got 30 seconds.
Yeah, that's cool with me. I mean, we're about to be Stephen A Nation right now. Hey, I was wondering about Rob Pelinka. He had his own agency, right?
He did.
Okay, I'm tired of people calling Lakers mom and pop shop. So did Rob Pelinka run his agency as a mom and pop shop? Because he's obviously running the Lakers now. And can
you can't time out. You can't say he's obviously running the Lakers now. For all we know, it's Linda Rambis, who's very, very tight with Jenny. We don't know that. We don't know the answer to that question. It'll be interesting to see if Ty Lue is going to be the next. It'll be interesting to see if Ty Lue is going to be the next head coach because we know that's who LeBron wants. We'll see what happens.
Oh yeah, we need some shooters too.
Oh, well, we know that. Take it easy, man. Why don't you tell me the sky's blue and the weather's warm in L.A. next? Tell me something I don't know. Who the hell doesn't know the Lakers need shooters? My God. Boston better win tonight. And the Rockets better win tomorrow night in order to survive. I'll talk to y'all Monday. Until then, peace of love.
Hey, what's up? It's